New New York Times editorial board member Sarah Jeong keeps her job despite racist tweets. Jim Acosta loves that dude, some Jim Acosta. And President Trump argues with Ivanka over the media. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Oh man, we have a fun show for you today. So many things to talk about. But first, I need to remind you that you need to stock up on some precious metals. Okay, the reality of the world suggests that inflation is a possibility. The national debt is a serious problem. That's money that we owe other countries. It's money that we are going to have to raise through bonds or through taxes that could create inflation on the other end. If your entire life savings is tied to the US dollar, you have to ask yourself, what is your plan from hyperinflation? If the stilts fall out from under the economy, with higher wages, there's an increase in minimum wage across the country too. That could lead to price inflation. Import prices are going to skyrocket with trade wars. Raw material prices are increasing with tariffs, rising housing prices. All of this could lead the government to actually start printing more money, which could lead to a certain level of inflation, meaning that your savings are worth less. Well, this is why you ought to use some of your money to buy gold, right? My savings plan is diversified and yours should be too. The company that I trust with precious metals purchases, Birch Gold Group. And right now, thanks to a little-known IRS tax law, you can even move your IRA or eligible 401k into an IRA backed by physical gold and silver. It's perfect for people who want to protect their hard-earned retirement savings from any future geopolitical uncertainty. Look back historically, when the bottom falls out of everything, gold tends to safeguard savings. Birch Gold Group has thousands of satisfied customers, countless 5-star reviews, an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Contact Birch Gold Group right now to request a free information kit on precious metals. This comprehensive 16-page kit reveals how gold and silver can protect your savings, how you can legally move your IRA or 401k out of risky stocks and bonds and into a precious metals IRA. To get that no-cost, no-obligation kit, just go to birchgold.com/Ben. That's birchgold.com/Ben. There's a reason that I trust the folks over at Birch Gold to do my precious metals investing. You should trust them as well. Make sure you ask all your questions, and then once you have your answers, head over there, get that free information kit when you go to birchgold.com/Ben. That's birchgold.com/Ben. Go check it out right now. Okay, so meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about the New York Times. So the New York Times, about a year ago, tried to hire a tech reporter. This tech reporter, it turned out, was friends with some rather unsavory people on the internet, and people dug up her old tweets, and then the New York Times fired this person. The New York Times, however, has not fired a woman named Sarah Jeong. Sarah Jeong is their new tech person on the New York Times editorial board, and she has some pretty bad tweets. Now, as a person who's been targeted for old tweets, it is my opinion that old tweets should not end your career as a general rule unless they are a revelation to the person who hired you. So, for example, if I had a bunch of tweets 10 years old and somebody had hired me and they didn't know about my old tweets, like they hadn't been public fodder, they hadn't done their research or something, and then it came to light, then firing me would not be the end of the world. If, however, they knew what they were getting when they hired me, then they should not fire me over calls to boycott. They should not fire me just on a principled level over them making a bad decision. Like, the fault of the New York Times here is the fault of the New York Times. It's not Sarah Jeong's fault. She tweeted this stuff in the past 4 years, and the New York Times just didn't do its research, or if they did do their research, they obviously didn't care. So that's a little bit different from, for example, the Roseanne Barr situation, where ABC fully knew that Roseanne Barr was kind of a crazy person, but she then tweeted something new, and that new thing was something that, it's new information. Disney didn't have it when they decided to hire Roseanne. ABC didn't have it when they decided to hire Roseanne, and so that sort of changes the equation. Well, Sarah Jeong, all this stuff has been known, okay? And here's some of the stuff that she tweeted, and I'll explain why this matters. She tweeted, "Oh man, it's kind of sick how much joy I get out of being cruel to old white men." And she also tweeted this: "Dumbass effing white people marking up the internet with their opinions like dogs pissing on fire hydrants." Right? She's just a delightful, delightful person. And it's not just restricted to that. There's some old tweets that are now surfacing about cops, where she tweeted stuff like, "Oh boy, I sure would fight the cops with my guns. I wonder why black people haven't thought of doing that, huh? And let me know when a cop gets killed by a rock or a Molotov cocktail or a stray shard of glass from a precious, precious window." And says, "When homeless people can beat cops senseless and suffer nary a repercussion, then let's talk about accountability going both ways." So she's an execrable human. Right? I mean, she seems like a bad person. These are not good tweets. But the New York Times knew all this when they hired her. So the New York Times came out and they defended her, which tells you something about the New York Times. I think it is good, by the way, that employers are not jumping to firing people based on social media mobbing. This lady is a bad lady, but I don't think that it is a good thing as a general rule for employers to start firing people based on the social media mob getting angry. Right? We've seen this from the left too many times to think that it's any better when it comes from the right. It's just not a good idea to have blowback on Twitter drive whether somebody can hold a job or not as a general rule. Okay, but the New York Times released a statement, and their statement is more telling about the New York Times than anything else, because as I say, a year ago, the New York Times fired somebody for doing exactly what Sarah Jeong did, except that she was perceived to be on the right. Sarah Jeong is perceived to be on the left, so she gets to keep her job. Here's what the New York Times said. They said, "We hired Sarah Jeong because of the exceptional work she has done covering the internet and technology at a range of respected publications. Her journalism and the fact that she is a young Asian woman have made her a subject of frequent online harassment. For a period of time, she responded to that harassment by imitating the rhetoric of her accusers." Okay, this is legitimately the worst excuse I have ever heard for why you would tweet racist stuff. That's really, like, people were tweeting racist stuff at me, so in imitation of them, I decided to tweet racist stuff back at them. Yeah, that's good. Good excuse. Well done, guys. And then the New York Times says, "She now sees that this approach only served to feed the vitriol that we too often see on social media. She regrets it, and the Times does not condone it. We had candid conversations with Sarah as part of our thorough vetting process, which included a review of her social media history. She understands that this type of rhetoric is not acceptable at the Times, and we are confident she will be an important voice for the editorial board moving forward." So several things can be true here at once. One, I don't think the New York Times should fire this lady. They broke it, they bought it. Okay, they bought it. They knew what she was when they hired her. They should bear the consequences. If you choose not to subscribe to the New York Times, you have every right to do that, and they should bear the consequences of their own decision-making. Two, does the New York Times have a double standard? You bet your ass they have a double standard. You bet your life they have a double standard. There is no question the New York Times has an insane double standard. Not only does the New York Times have an insane double standard, Sarah Jeong has an insane double standard, because it turns out Sarah Jeong loves social media mobbing. She's been part of it. Tim Hunt, you'll recall, is a former honorary professor with the University College London School of Life and Medical Sciences. He's a Nobel Prize winner in physiology and medicine, as well as recipient of the Royal Medal. Okay, he made a joke one time in a speech about how young women and young men shouldn't work in laboratories together because they tend to fall in love. How do you know this was a joke? Because he was specifically referencing the fact that he married his lab assistant, right? He who is a scientist in her own right. People took this as, well, he's saying women shouldn't be in the laboratory, which is weird since his wife is actually a very highfalutin scientist in her own right. He was basically mobbed out of a job. He had to resign his job. He was punished by all of the academies of which he was a part. And here's what Sarah Jeong tweeted at the time. "Tim Hunt sad. Tim Hunt too sad to do science. Twitter criticized him, and he just start crying." So she's really a delight. And then there was Jeong's reaction to the firing of Benny Johnson, who now works over at the Daily Caller. A long time ago, Benny was caught up in a sort of plagiarism accusation, and Sarah Jeong tweeted out, "Lots of talented people never make mistakes, and they still have trouble finding jobs. F Benny Johnson's redemption." Well, I mean, I think that we could probably apply that same logic to Sarah Jeong. And then she said this about Justine Sacco. You remember Justine Sacco? That's the woman PR executive who was on a plane and she was traveling to Africa and she tweeted something about getting AIDS. And by the time she landed, her life had basically been destroyed. She tweeted this bad joke about AIDS and suddenly she was out of a job. No one would hire her. She had been made a pariah all across the media. I mean, it was really insane. People were tweeting, "Has Justine landed yet?" And this became a top trending Twitter hashtag because virtue signaling on Twitter is extraordinarily strong. Here's what Sarah Jeong tweeted about that. "What I'm getting at is that what happened to Sacco was not that bad. And white America's obsession with her is deeply telling." So that wasn't bad either. It turns out that when Barry Weiss, a New York Times columnist, was mobbed for having suggested that the right was being mistreated online, Sarah Jeong was very upset about that. She says, "Is there anything more tedious than media navel-gazing over outrage mobs? Start paying attention to what's happening outside your Ivy League New York City-centric circles. Look at how the pylons operate in other contexts and get some bleep perspective." She did a bad tweet. She got engagement for it, and then she didn't want to engage back. What exactly was Barry Weiss's bad tweet? Her bad tweet was, she said immigrants get the job done when she was talking about the daughter of an immigrant who went to the Olympics in ice skating. That was her bad tweet. And Sarah Jeong said she deserved everything she got. The discourse is not being harmed because of people questioning a bad ice skating tweet. The discourse started getting harmed with, say, the online death threats, etc. Once you've seen enough of these, you can also see that people tweeting at Barry Weiss is not a big deal, LOL. And Brendan Eich, I mean, it's over and over. She's been part of these social media mobs, urging them on, cheering them. So there is a fair bit of karmic justice to Sarah Jeong now being social media mobbed. Now, do I think, again, for the 11th time in the segment, do I think that employers should start firing people based on social media mobbing? I do not. I think it's a mistake. I think employers should only fire employees if they are feeling actual business blowback from the decisions of those employees made while in the employ of those employers. Okay, but this is not that. So I don't think Sarah Jeong should be fired. I think she should sit on the New York Times editorial board, and we should continue to characterize the New York Times as a terrible piece of garbage newspaper. I think that seems to me the fairest outcome here. That she should have to work there, after having criticized the New York Times for years, by the way, as being too right-wing. She should have to work there, and then we can all sit here and laugh at the New York Times for being stupid enough to hire somebody like Sarah Jeong. By the way, I think it is worthwhile noting that Sarah Jeong, the real reason she wasn't fired is not because the New York Times has suddenly discovered the evils of social media mobbing. That is not why she was not fired. Okay, she was not fired because the New York Times agrees with her. She was not fired because the New York Times agrees with her take on white America. They are a bunch of white, upper crust New York elitists who believe that anyone who is not white in the United States is inherently under the boot of Uncle Sam, and therefore when Sarah Jeong tweets racist stuff about white people, it's because white people deserve it. How do I know this? Because there are people on the left who say this sort of stuff openly. So there's an idiot named Zach Beauchamp, and I say idiot advisedly. I think it may be too kind a word for him. He's a columnist over at Vox.com, which is the Mos Eisley of the commentariat. Right? It's a hive of villainy and scum. And I say that having actual friends who work there. Right? Like, little story. After Zach Beauchamp wrote an article 2 weeks ago suggesting that Mark Duplass, this independent director, we talked about it on the show, he had tweeted something nice about me. And then after he was social media mobbed, he deleted the nice tweet about me and then issued a public apology for ever having said anything nice about me. Zach Beauchamp wrote a piece for Vox.com suggesting that I completely deserved it and Mark Duplass was exactly right because I'm a horrible, horrible human being. So Mark Duplass should have been social media mobbed and he should have deleted the tweet and all the rest of this stuff. I got letters from 2 different Vox writers who would not come out publicly and say so, saying Zach Beauchamp is an idiot and you are not a bad person because I know you and we talk frequently. In any case, Zach Beauchamp tweets this out yesterday, right? Here's what he tweets out. A lot of people on the internet today confusing the expressive way anti-racists and minorities talk about white people, unquote, with actual race-based hatred for some unfathomable reason. So he looks at those tweets from tweets that say things like, and I quote, dumbass effing white people marking up the internet with their opinions like dogs pissing on fire hydrants. And he says that this is actually the expressive way anti-racists and minorities talk about white people. And this should never be confused with actual race-based hatred. It would be unfathomable for you to actually equate these two things. Like when you say dumbass effing white people, how could I not read that as, oh, that's just the expressive way that Asian people talk, which is racist, you idiot. Okay, Zach Beauchamp, just the worst. He's just the worst. And then David Joachim, who is, I guess, a writer for the ex-New York Times writer. He tweets out, Dear white people, racism is about the powerful keeping down the powerless. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Racism can be used by the powerful to keep down the powerless, but racism is not about the powerful keeping down the powerless. Racism is about race-based hatred. That is the actual definition. We generally are the powerful, meaning we white people. White people isn't a slur. Oh, really? It's not a slur? Why don't you say black people and then make a giant generalization about black people, like they're dumbass effing black people? Why don't you say something awful, awful, terrible like that and see how that goes for you, David Joachim? And then he says the F word for gay people and the N word are slurs because they subordinate. You know, as opposed to saying dumbass effing white people. That's not subordinating white people in any way. He says your moral equivalence is nonsense. Reverse racism isn't a thing. You're right. Reverse racism isn't a thing. It's just called racism. It's just called racism. It's not reverse racism. It's just called racism. But this is an actual perspective on the left. An actual perspective on the left suggests that racism from the powerful is the only thing that matters. There is no such thing as racism in any other context. Right? The left tends to see things in this Marxist universe where power relations are the entirety of what we should be talking about every day. Relations between the more powerful groups and the less powerful groups. And the less powerful groups are less powerful because those less powerful groups have been put upon by the more powerful groups. As I always say, the Marxist view of life is that if you have 2 people in a room, one person has $5, one person has $1, it must be that the person with $5 somehow subordinated the person with $1. That is not true in a free country, but this is how the left sees things. So if white people are racist, then their racism is really just a tool of their power. But if black people are racist, or Asian people are racist, or Mexicans are racist, or Jews are racist, then this means that they are just fighting back against the man. They're just fighting back against the man, and they are using the tools at their disposal to fight back against this power relationship. This is how you end up with this foolishness of intersectionality, suggesting that certain opinions are worth more than others based on the color of the skin of the person who's making a particular argument. I want to talk a little bit more about that in just 1 second. First, let's talk about your security. So we have a sponsor, Ring. They're the video doorbell company. They allow you to see and speak to anyone when they come to your door. Well, they've now sent us actual footage of Ring busting crooks in the act. This one is just creepy. I don't actually know if this guy is a criminal or not. Suffice it to say, he is not coming to the door to deliver a pizza. And things get real weird. Here is what that looks like.
Hey, sorry, we're in the middle of dinner. Can I help you?
Yes, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, I haven't seen you in a while.
I don't know who you are.
I'm Justin.
I don't know you, Justin.
I met you a long time ago when I was younger.
No, I'm sorry, you're in the wrong place.
Okay. Much love and God bless for both gods.
Wow. Well, so that guy's weird. And you wouldn't want him, but you wouldn't want to open the door and you see that, right across the screen. Like that's the screen door. That's not a good idea. And that's why you need the Ring video doorbell. You will never miss a visitor, including visitors like Justin or Jason. Whether you're home or away, you can see and speak to visitors on your smartphone from anywhere, even share video clips to neighbors using the Ring app. We have the Ring floodlight cam at home and the spotlight cam. You can build a ring of security around your entire property. Ring's products are just fantastic. Stop crime before it happens. Help make your neighborhood safer with Ring, and you can save up to $150 on a Ring of security kit at ring.com/Ben. That's ring.com/Ben. $150 off when you go to ring.com/Ben. Go check it out right now. Use that /Ben so they know that we sent you. Okay, so final note on this tendency of the left to be okay with racism so long as it's not coming from white people. I was talking with a leftist friend who happens to work with an aforementioned publication. We were talking about intersectionality, and she was saying all intersectionality really is context. It's just trying to suggest that every interaction has a context in which group characteristics play a part. And I said, well, I'm not sure, number one, that every interaction does have that context. And second of all, if there is a context in which, for example, black people suffer more from racism than white people, if that's true, I think that if we're talking about how much that impacts disparities between group outcome, I think that may account for a small percentage of the disparity between group outcome, maybe 15, 20%. But intersectional theorists think it's 90%. And normal Democrats think that it's 60%. And that's why they're constantly railing about societal injustice and not taking into account that people should just not act like jerks. And this is true of Sarah Jeong. People on the left look at Sarah Jeong and say, she's Asian. She must have been put upon. She went to Harvard Law School. If we're going to talk about group characteristics, the highest earning group in the United States are Asian Americans. White Americans earn 76 cents on the dollar for every dollar earned by an Asian household. Okay, white American households earn less on average than Asian American households, but she is one of the put upon groups. Why? Because intersectional theory really is a guise for power relations. Because the left sees all race-based discussion as a way to reverse power relationships, they use intersectionality as a club in order to beat up people who are not of a minority group. And that's what is that's why Sarah Jeong still has a job today. If you're on the right, she would not have a job. If you're white, she would not have a job. She is Asian and she is on the left. Therefore, she has a job today at the New York Times, which tells you a fair bit about how awful the New York Times actually is, which is why I say they should continue to employ her so we can mock them for their awfulness on a routine basis. Okay, meanwhile, speaking of awfulness in the media, yesterday, Jim Acosta was doing his job at the White House, which is basically to show up on camera and show his bouffant to the world. And Jim Acosta, as I've said many times in the past, Jim Acosta, CNN's White House correspondent, get you somebody who loves you like Jim Acosta loves Jim Acosta. That dude loves him some Jim Acosta. I mean, if we could retell the modern myth of Narcissus, Jim Acosta would be in the starring role. So Jim Acosta gets into it with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Why? Because President Trump has done his routine again where he calls the press the enemy of the people. Now, as I have said, approximately 1,273,322 times on the show, I don't think the media are the enemy of the people. I think this is a silly line from the president. I think the media lie a fair bit. I think, more importantly, the media unconsciously bias their stories in leftward directions a fair bit. I think I think you have to double check the media's work on a routine basis and try and try and separate the opinion from the fact in their news stories. I think that's your job as a consumer of news. So I'm fully aware of media bias. I've ripped about media bias many times on the air with CNN, right? I'm the guy who went on CNN and during the last Gaza war suggested that if Hamas could have a news outlet, it would look exactly like CNN. Right? I am not shy about saying to various hosts on various networks that their networks are biased. I said this, I remember, to Martin Bashir before he lost his job at MSNBC, that MSNBC is a left-wing network and that they bias their news that way. And so President Trump isn't wrong about that. But when he says enemy of the people, not my favorite term, because it does have certain connotations that are just not correct, okay? They're not the enemy of the people. They are just biased sources for a truth they think they are purveying when they purport to be objective. In any case, Jim Acosta has now made a pretty solid living off of acting like he is victimized by the American people who don't trust him. Now, the reason we don't trust Jim Acosta is not because Trump said enemy of the people. This is such a left-wing myth that the right wing, we actually loved the media until President Trump came around. Then Trump came around, he said mean stuff about the media. And then we were all like, oh man, those guys do suck. Okay. In like 2001, I think, Bernard Goldberg wrote a book called Bias, about bias in the media. It was a #1 New York Times bestseller because everyone on the right has hated the media for decades. Because the media are wildly biased and always have been, certainly as long as I've been alive, going back even further than that, when you had Walter Cronkite, who was a leftist, and Edward Murrow, who was a leftist, as the quote-unquote trusted voices of the American news media. So the media has been biased for literally generations in the United States. It's not that Trump made us hate the media. It's that we hated the media, and then Trump took advantage of the fact that we hated the media. That's exactly what happened in election 2016. How do I know this? Because in election 2012, Newt Gingrich jumped to a presidential lead specifically by smacking around John Harwood in the middle of a presidential debate. Right? He said, "You guys are the biased media, you're awful." And everyone, yeah, that guy should be president. Like, really, it's not unique to Trump. In any case, Jim Acosta now makes a living going around pretending that history started in the last 15 minutes and that now the right hates the media and we don't like Jim Acosta, not because Jim Acosta is bad at his job, which he is, spoiler alert, but also that we really hate the media because Donald Trump is a big old meanie. So he goes to the White House and he decides this is going to be his Sam Donaldson moment. He's going to sit there and he's going to grill Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, over whether the media are the enemies of the people. Now, before I show you the clip, before I play for you the clip, remember what Sarah Huckabee Sanders' job is. Her job is not to express the opinions of Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Right? That is specifically not her opinion. This is why somebody from the White House once asked me, would I be interested in working for the White House press office, which is hilarious. And my answer was, of course, no, because I prefer to express my own opinion, not the opinion of the president. Her job is to express the president's opinion. It is not her job to express her own opinion or Jim Acosta's opinion or anybody else's opinion. And if she did that, she would not be doing her job. Jim Acosta suggests to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I need you, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, to tell me that the media are not the enemy of the people. But that's not her job. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I think, clocks him pretty good. He has this coming.
You did not say in the course of those remarks that you just made that the press is not the enemy of the people. For the sake of this room, the people who are in this room, this democracy, this country, all the people around the world are watching what you're saying, Sarah. And the White House for the United States of America, the President of the United States should not refer to us as the enemy of the people. His own daughter acknowledges that. And all I'm asking you to do, Sarah, is to acknowledge that right now and right here.
I appreciate your passion. I share it. I've addressed this question. I've addressed my personal feelings. I'm here to speak on behalf of the president. He's made his comments clear.
Okay, and she's exactly right. That is, in fact, her job. Right? Her job is not to reflect what Jim Acosta wants to say or what Sarah Huckabee Sanders wants to say. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is not an elected official. She works at the pleasure of the President of the United States. End of story. Now, do I like what Trump says? No. Again, I would bet you money that if you got Sarah Huckabee Sanders on the phone off the record right now, she would tell you the same thing. I'll bet you that she doesn't like that line either. But does that matter? No, because that's not her job. And the whole point, and Acosta knows that's not her job, and his whole point here is to somehow shame Sarah Huckabee Sanders as an individual human being. If he wants to go out and yell this question to Trump, go and yell it at Trump. You want to grill Sarah Huckabee Sanders over Trump's perspective? Do that. But to make Sarah Huckabee Sanders the enemy here is pretty absurd. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders has another response that is just as good. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she then goes off on CNN. I'm going to play that for you in just a second. But first, let's talk about your energy level. The one constant in life is change. Society changes, technology changes, health innovations change as well. To stay on the cutting edge of today's fast-paced business environment, you can't rely on energy drinks and coffee to get you through the day. To crack the code on human performance, there's a team of top physicians, and they gathered to form a Brick House Nutrition. They came up with a great product. It's called Dawn to Dusk. Dawn to Dusk is today's most advanced formula to stimulate your heart, brain, and cells by providing clean energy and focus for up to 10 hours with no jitters, no afternoon crash. You know, one of the salespeople came in for Brick House Nutrition to meet with us when the ad agency president, and he represents the company. He came in, let's just say he was hyped up, and that dude had flown all day long, and he was a high energy fellow, and that was because he hadn't used any coffee that day. It was because he was using Brick House Nutrition. Dawn to Dusk will make you the sharpest guy on the conference call. It'll keep you awake, the brightest mind in the meeting, the envy of the office. Go check it out right now, brickhouseben.com, and use promo code Shapiro at checkout. You get a 15% discount. Again, brickhouseben.com. Use promo code Shapiro because, come on, man, I am a brick house. Okay, brickhouseben.com. Use promo code Shapiro. If you're listening to this podcast on your phone and you don't have internet access right now, just text promo code Shapiro to 41411, 41411 for a text reminder for this promotion. Don't forget to use that promo code Shapiro at checkout and you get 15% off. Again, it is brickhouse.com. It is brickhouseben.com, brickhouseben.com, and use that promo code Shapiro to go check it out. Okay, so Sarah Huckabee Sanders is grilled by Jim Acosta, who he wants her to admit right here, right now, the press are not the enemy of the people. Sarah, tell me. Again, are the press the enemy of the people? No. Is it Sarah Huckabee Sanders' job to express her own opinion? No. And then Sarah Huckabee Sanders basically wheels around with a George Foreman-like punch and knocks Jim Acosta through the wall, mentioning the fact that, while you talk about how the press are the victims of the President of the United States, you guys have been pretty awful to Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Here's Sarah Huckabee Sanders explaining.
Repeatedly, the media resorts to personal attacks without any content other than to incite anger. The media has attacked me personally on a number of occasions, including your own network, said I should be harassed as a life sentence, that I should be choked. ICE officials are not welcomed in their place of worship, and personal information is shared on the internet. When I was hosted by the Correspondents Association, of which almost all of you are members of, you brought a comedian up to attack my appearance and call me a traitor to my own gender. In fact, as far as I know, I'm the first press secretary in the history of the United States that's required Secret Service protection. The media continues to ratchet up the verbal assault against the president and everyone in this administration. And certainly we have a role to play, but the media has a role to play for the discourse in this country as well.
That is 100% true, right? What she said there is 197% true, right? It is just as pure as omega-3 Omex fish oil. I mean, is that pure? It is absolutely pure stuff. It is 100% pure. Okay, what she says there, that the media have been complicit in the failures of trust and the battle between the media and President Trump is exactly right. And then, so what does Jim Acosta do with this information? Jim Acosta, who loves him some Jim Acosta, what does he do with this information? He's been told, you guys might want to stop creating a situation where I need security by Sarah Huckabee Sanders. You might want to create a situation where you treat people fairly, and then maybe there won't be so many people who are willing to treat you unfairly. Maybe we all ought to go weapons down. So what does Jim Acosta do? He goes on TV and he preens. Right? He goes on CNN and he preens. He says, we should make bumper stickers because he's a reporter, guys, an objective news reporter. This is some serious journalisming you are seeing right here from Jim Acosta. He goes on CNN, we should make bumper stickers. We should rally. We should get out there in front of the White House. Journalists unite. And then Jim Acosta reveals the fact that he is just as bad at inventing chants as he is at journalisming. Here he is explaining his bumper stickers.
Well, I think, maybe we should make some bumper stickers, make some buttons. Maybe we should go out on Pennsylvania Avenue like these folks who chant CNN sucks and fake news. Maybe we should go out, all journalists should go out on Pennsylvania Avenue and chant, we're not the enemy of the people.
It's a bad chant. It's a bad chant. Also, if you really, that'll definitely work, Jim. That will definitely work. We don't trust you at all. So I think what you should really do, and we don't trust you in large part because of your disparate treatment of Democrats and Republicans. So I think what you really should do is you should probably go out in front of the White House where a Republican resides, and then you should chant, you're not the enemy of the people, in opposition to Donald Trump supporters. Absolutely will respect you more then. You shouldn't do better in terms of your journalisming. You shouldn't actually try to be more objective. You shouldn't try to worship yourself a little bit less, Jim Acosta. Instead, what you should do is you should go out there and chant about how awesome you are. That'll probably fix all the things. Okay, this is just Jim Acosta catering to his base. Now, again, President Trump caters to his base too. The difference is what their jobs are. President Trump is a politician. President Trump says a lot of things to cater to his base that I don't agree with and that I find abhorrent in many cases. But he is a politician catering to a base. Jim Acosta's job is not to cater to his base. Jim Acosta's job is to ask questions of administrations that actually have content. His job is not to be an activist. If he wants to be an activist, there are plenty of places for him to do that. If he wants to do opinion journalism, then he should just say, I'm an opinion journalist. I, Ben Shapiro, am an opinion journalist, right? I cover the news and I have an opinion. And you all know where I stand. I'm not hiding the ball. The reason people don't trust Jim Acosta is not because he's left-wing. The reason people don't trust Jim Acosta is because he proclaims he is not left-wing while acting exactly like a correspondent for the Daily Kos. Okay, and then he continues along these lines. He says, I'm so tired of this. Who cares whether you're tired of this, Jim Acosta? Why are you the story? Why is Jim Acosta the story? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm tired of this. Honestly, Brooke, I'm tired of this.
Poor me.
It is not right. It is not fair. It is not just. It is un-American.
Okay. Like, get off your Aaron Sorkin West Wing script now, Jim. And why don't you actually try to do your job? It's un-American. I'm so tired of this. Yeah, I'm sure you have it rough, Jim. I'm sure things are real rough for you. Coming as a guy who needed 600 police officers to protect him when he wanted to just speak at Berkeley. I'm sure it's real rough for you that the president calls you mean names. Ooh. Okay, again, should the president call you those mean names? No. But are we going to pretend that this is like the end of the world that the president says this stuff? I'm not going to pretend that either because it just, come on. And here's the thing. The double standard is just, it's glaring, and that's why people don't trust members of the media. So another example, there's a BBC host yesterday who's interviewing Sean Spicer. Now, Sean Spicer was not a good White House press secretary. Right? Sean Spicer always looked like he was dying a little bit behind his eyes. Like if you could look through into Sean Spicer's soul, every time he had to get up there and talk about crowd size and act all angry, you could see that there was a part of Sean Spicer that wanted to crawl into a hole and just plot. Okay, but that said, Sean Spicer did the same job that Jake Harney did when he was at the White House, which is to lie for the president. Let's be honest about what the White House press secretary does. The job of the White House press secretary is to lie for the president of the United States. This has been true as long as I have been alive, basically. There are very few press secretaries who don't do it. I really do think that members of the Bush administration did it less. But Jake Harney used to get up there every day and say, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, knowing full well that wasn't true. Robert Gibbs used to do the exact same thing. I confronted Robert Gibbs about this in 2012 at the DNC, I remember. So anyway, Sean Spicer goes on BBC, and the BBC correspondent says, you have corrupted our entire political discourse, because it is now news to members of the BBC, apparently, that White House press secretaries fib on behalf of the presidents whom they serve. Right? It only applies to Sean Spicer because it's brand new. The world started turning yesterday.
You joked about it when you presented the Emmy Awards, but it wasn't a joke. It was the start of the most corrosive culture. You played with the truth. You led us down a dangerous path. You have corrupted discourse for the entire world by going along with these lies.
Solid journalisming there. That really, instead of just asking a question like, Sean Spicer, did you mean it when you said that the president had the largest inaugural crowd? Like, she could pin him. There are 1,000 ways to pin people to the wall. I do it for a living. It's not difficult. There are 1,000 ways you could pin him to the wall on dishonesty, but saying that he corrupted the entire discourse is so free of all context in the American political system that it's just absurd. It's just absurd. You're right. It wasn't Bill Clinton stooping interns in the Oval Office and lying about it to the public that corrupted the political discourse. It wasn't that. It wasn't Joe Biden going out there and saying that Mitt Romney wanted to put black people back in chains. That didn't corrupt the political discourse in any way. It wasn't Barack Obama lying repeatedly about both immigration and healthcare. That didn't corrupt the discourse in any way at all. For that matter, it wasn't JFK stooping 18-year-old interns in the White House. That didn't corrupt America in any way. It didn't corrupt America in any way when Watergate happened. American politics was clean up till the point when Trump took office. Did you know this? Breaking news. American politics was awesome, clean, and pure as the driven snow until Donald Trump took office, at which point evil people like Sean Spicer came in and sullied up the place. They just got mud all over the curtains. You're wondering why we don't trust the media? This is why we don't trust the media. Okay, now with that said, in a second, I want to talk about President Trump's impact on the party, because I don't think it's been entirely good on these things. I think that we can be honest and still destroy the media. I don't think you have to be dishonest to destroy the media. And I also don't think that you have to say things that are over the top in order to destroy the media, at least the media's dishonesty. I don't think that our goal should be to, quote unquote, destroy the media as much as it should be to club them back into covering things objectively, or at least announcing their own political allegiances. We'll get into that in just 1 second, but first you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com and subscribe. Now, let me tell you something about the subscriptions. The subscriptions allow us to bring you the show. The subscriptions allow us to bring you this beautiful set. The subscriptions allow me to express my brilliance and witticisms to you on a daily basis. They allow Senya to have a job. They allow Jess to have a job, even though she's never seen The Godfather or Jaws. They allow a lot of people in this office to work. That is why you need to go purchase a subscription right now and help us out. People, I get letters like this all the time. How can we help you out? The answer is you can support us by buying a subscription. It's $9.99 a month, and when you get the $99 a year subscription, that is number one, cheaper. And number two, you get the Leftist Tears Hot or Cold Tumbler, the most favored tumbler of all the humans. It is just fantastic. So go check that out right now. Also, when you subscribe at YouTube or iTunes, then you get our Sunday specials, which come out, as you may guess from the name, every Sunday. Our new one has David Mamet, the author of The Untouchables, probably America's greatest living playwright. You'll remember him from the Always Be Closing speech because he wrote Glengarry Glen Ross. So we had him on Sunday, and we'll talk about everything from politics to pop culture. It's really entertaining, so go check that out right now. Please leave us a review. If you subscribe to YouTube, hit the little bell so that you make sure that you are updated every time we post a new video. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.